What if I told you that some railway lines were built not for efficiency, but for survival? That certain tracks have claimed more lives than the wars they served? That there are rail routes so treacherous, engineers refuse to work on them? Today we're exploring the 20 worst railroads in the world. Lines where every mile tells a story of human suffering, engineering nightmares, and deadly miscalculations. These aren't just dangerous tracks. These are monuments to the railroad's darkest chapters. Stick around because you won't believe where the worst of the worst is located. 20. The Flam Railway, Norway. Our countdown begins in Norway's breathtaking yet treacherous fjord country, where the Flam Railway descends 863 meters in just 20 kilometers, one of the steepest train rides on Earth. This engineering marvel seems picturesque until you understand the reality. Grades reaching 5.5%, meaning the train drops 55 meters for every kilometer traveled. The track clings to mountainsides where avalanches regularly bury entire sections, requiring constant monitoring for rock slides and avalanche conditions. Winter operations often shut down completely when snow loads exceed structural limits. Despite operating as a tourist attraction today, it requires extensive avalanche protection systems that didn't exist during original construction. Systems built after too many near disasters taught engineers that beauty and terror often occupy the same mountain. Number 19. The Aonqua Chucho, South Africa. The Aonqua Chucho was the last remaining continually operated passenger steam train in Africa, ending operation in August 2006. But its closure wasn't due to lack of passengers. It was because the route had become too dangerous to operate. The 67-kilometer line between George and Nizhna wound through unstable coastal terrain, where landslides regularly buried tracks and storm surges destroyed bridges. The combination of coastal erosion, unstable cliff faces, and aging infrastructure created a perfect storm of danger, with multiple derailments in the line's final years, forcing its permanent closure. Today, it remains one of the most spectacular abandoned railways in the world, a testament to the fact that sometimes nature simply wins the war against human ambition. 18. The Tren a las Nubes, Argentina. The Train to the Clouds is a tourist service that runs along the eastern part of Argentina's Salta-Antofagasta railway line, climbing over 4,220 meters above sea level to become the fifth highest railway in the world. At 13,850 feet, passengers regularly suffer altitude sickness, while mechanical systems fail due to oxygen deprivation. The famous Polverilla Viaduct spans a chasm 224 feet high with no safety barriers, creating a crossing that feels more like flying than rail travel. Original construction used forced indigenous labor, with hundreds dying from altitude sickness and exposure to extreme weather conditions. Even today, the thin air at this elevation means that what should be a scenic journey becomes a medical emergency for many passengers, as their bodies simply cannot process enough oxygen to function normally. Number 17. The Hiram Bingham Railway, Peru. The tourist train to Machu Picchu seems romantic, until you realize it follows one of South America's most precarious mountain railways. The line climbs through the Sacred Valley, using switchbacks so steep that trains must reverse direction multiple times, all while navigating terrain prone to landslides and flash floods. During the rainy season, entire sections of track regularly wash away as the Urubamba River, which the tracks follow, can rise 20 feet in hours, submerging rail bridges without warning. Despite operating as a tourist service, derailments occur regularly due to unstable mountain terrain and weather-damaged infrastructure. What makes this particularly treacherous is that tourists board expecting a scenic journey to ancient ruins, unaware they're traveling one of the continent's most geologically unstable railway routes, where a pleasant morning can turn deadly when afternoon storms trigger landslides that bury entire trains. 16. The Matherine Hill Railway, India. India's smallest hill railway may seem quaint, but its 2-foot gauge tracks navigate terrain that regularly claims both trains and passengers. The 21-kilometer line climbs 850 meters through dense forest, using curves so tight that trains travel at walking speed, while during monsoon season, the tracks literally become rivers. Annual flooding washes away entire sections of track, requiring complete reconstruction each year, while landslides regularly bury trains, sometimes for days. The railway is frequently suspended due to safety concerns and infrastructure damage, making it less a reliable transport service and more a seasonal gamble with nature. What makes this particularly dangerous is the false sense of security created by its toy train designation. Passengers expect a gentle ride through the hills, not realizing they're boarding a narrow-gauge nightmare that battles the elements for survival. Number 15. The Kalka-Shimla Railway, India. Another of India's toy trains that earned its dangerous reputation through sheer topographical impossibility. The Kalka-Shimla Railway represents everything that can go wrong when colonial ambition meets Himalayan reality. This UNESCO World Heritage Line includes 864 bridges and 102 tunnels in just 96 kilometers, roughly 10 major structures per kilometer, each one a potential failure point. During construction, one tunnel collapse buried an entire work crew alive, and despite UNESCO protection, the aging infrastructure regularly fails with bridge collapses and tunnel cave-ins occurring seasonally. The narrow gauge and extreme elevation changes create constant mechanical stress on both tracks and trains, while monsoon rains turn the mountainside into a cascade that regularly washes away sections of the line. Engineers call it a masterpiece of railway engineering, but locals know it as a death trap disguised as tourism. 14. The Dargiling Himalayan Railway, India. The Dargiling Himalayan Railway, known as the DHR, runs on 610mm gauge between New Jalpaiguri and Dargiling, climbing from 100 meters to 2,200 meters above sea level, using 6 zigzags and 3 loops to gain altitude. Built between 1879 and 1881, original construction killed over 1,000 workers from disease, accidents, and attacks by wildlife in terrain that seemed determined to resist human intrusion. The narrow gauge and extreme elevation changes create constant mechanical stress that leads to regular derailments due to track gauge expansion in extreme temperature variations. Monsoon flooding regularly undermines the narrow roadbed, while the combination of steep grades, tight curves, and aging infrastructure makes every journey a calculated risk. Despite its UNESCO World Heritage status, this toy train continues to operate on the edge of disaster, where mechanical failure at the wrong moment means a potentially fatal plunge down the Himalayan mountainside. Number 13. The Central Railway of Peru. The world's second highest railway reaches 15,685 feet above sea level at Ticlio Station, where human physiology begins to fail and mechanical systems break down from oxygen deprivation. The line includes 65 tunnels and 58 bridges in its climb through the Andes, with grades reaching 4.5% through terrain that shifts seasonally due to freeze-thaw cycles. Passengers regularly require oxygen assistance as the thin air makes breathing difficult, while several deaths from altitude sickness occur annually among those unprepared for the extreme elevation. The famous Ticlio station sits higher than most commercial aircraft fly, creating an environment where both humans and machines struggle to function normally. What makes this railway particularly treacherous is the combination of extreme altitude, unstable geological conditions, and the fact that emergency medical help is often hours away when altitude sickness or mechanical failure strikes in the remote Andean peaks. 12. The Cumbras and Toltec Scenic Railroad USA. This narrow-gauge line across the Colorado-New Mexico border operates through terrain so treacherous that original construction required building camps that could be abandoned at a moment's notice when weather or geological conditions turn deadly. The line crosses the 10,000-foot Cumbras Pass, using track that clings to mountainsides, with drops exceeding 1,500 feet and no guardrails, making derailment potentially fatal. Winter snowfall regularly exceeds 300 inches, creating avalanche conditions that can bury entire trains for months, while summer thunderstorms create flash floods that wash out bridges within minutes. The narrow gauge makes the trains particularly susceptible to high winds that regularly exceed 100 miles per hour across the exposed mountain passes. Despite operating as a tourist railroad today, the line remains at the mercy of Rocky Mountain weather that can turn from pleasant to deadly in minutes. stranding passengers in wilderness conditions where rescue might take days. Number 11. The Bernina Express route, Switzerland. Switzerland's famous scenic railway hides deadly secrets beneath its tourist-friendly exterior, operating through terrain where avalanches, rock slides, and glacial movement constantly threaten operations. The line climbs to 7,391 feet through the Alps, using the famous spiral viaducts, engineering marvels built to survive conditions that regularly destroy conventional infrastructure. Despite modern safety systems, the line requires constant monitoring for geological instability, as climate change has made rock slides and glacial flooding increasingly unpredictable. The seemingly safe tourist operation masks the reality that trains regularly shut down due to avalanche warnings, while spring thaws can trigger rock slides that destroy sections of track without warning. What makes this particularly deceptive is that passengers board expecting Swiss precision and safety, unaware that they're traveling through some of the most geologically active and unpredictable terrain in Europe, where natural disasters can strike with alpine suddenness. 10. The Omenami route, Japan. In Japan, the Omenami route cuts directly through the belly of Mount Aso, Japan's largest active volcano, requiring 17 kilometers of track through terrain that literally breathes fire. The line connects Takamori to Tateno Station, crossing volcanic zones where the ground can shift without warning, and volcanic activity creates constant thermal stress on rails that must withstand temperatures reaching 200 degrees Celsius. In 2016, a massive earthquake damaged the line so severely that entire sections simply disappeared, while the ongoing volcanic activity means that specialized steel and constant monitoring are required just to keep trains from melting. The route has been partially suspended since 2016, with repairs ongoing at enormous cost as engineers struggle against a mountain that actively resists their efforts. This railway represents the ultimate gamble with geological forces, where passengers literally ride through the heart of an active volcano that could erupt at any moment. Number 9. The Chennai-Rameswaram line, India. In southern India lies a railway that battles the sea itself twice daily, with the Chennai-Rameswaram line including the Pamban Bridge, a cantilever bridge that spans the Palk Strait where trains must coordinate with tide schedules to avoid disaster. During high tide and storms, waves crash directly over the tracks, creating the surreal sight of trains surrounded by churning ocean. The salt spray corrodes everything metal within months, requiring constant replacement of infrastructure, while cyclones turn the entire 2-kilometer bridge section into a pier surrounded by deadly seas. Multiple derailments have occurred due to high winds and structural damage from constant saltwater exposure, making this one of the few railways where weather reports include tide charts and wave heights. The line represents humanity's stubborn refusal to accept that some places were never meant for railways, where trains literally race against the ocean's fury twice each day. 8. The Georgetown Loop, Colorado, USA. Built in 1884 to serve Colorado's silver mines, the Georgetown Loop represents everything that can go wrong with mountain railways, constructed when human life was considered expendable in pursuit of mineral wealth. This narrow-gauge nightmare climbs 640 feet in just 4.5 miles, using curves so tight that passengers can see the locomotive from the rear car, while the track clings to mountainsides with drops exceeding 1,000 feet. Original construction killed dozens of workers who fell from the cliffsides, and the curves are so severe that freight cars regularly derailed, taking entire trains into the canyon below. The famous Devil's Gate Bridge spans a chasm where one mechanical failure means a 1,000-foot plunge to certain death. Today, it operates as a tourist railroad with modern safety equipment that didn't exist during its mining days. But the fundamental engineering remains a testament to an era when getting or out of mountains mattered more than getting miners home alive. Number 7. The Nariz del Diablo, Ecuador. The Devil's Nose earned its name honestly. This section of Ecuador's Trans-Andean Railway descends 500 meters in just 12 kilometers through a series of switchbacks carved into near-vertical cliff faces. The engineering solution was born of desperation: zigzag tracks that require trains to reverse direction multiple times while navigating curves with radiuses so tight that any speed above 15 kilometers per hour means certain derailment and a 1,500-foot drop. An estimated 4,000 workers died building this section alone, making it literally the most difficult railway in the world, as proclaimed by engineers who witnessed the carnage firsthand. The construction process involved lowering workers over cliff edges in baskets to drill holes by hand, with many falling to their deaths when ropes broke or rocks gave way. Today, the few tourist trains that still operate this route do so at speeds barely faster than walking, as the Devil's Nose remains as treacherous as the day it was carved from solid rock using dynamite and human sacrifice. 6. The Kunming-Heku Railway, China. China's gateway to Vietnam seemed like a strategic triumph until the bodies started piling up along this line that cuts through some of the most unstable terrain on Earth. The railway traverses tropical mountains prone to landslides, river valleys that flood without warning, and jungle terrain that literally devours infrastructure. Original construction in the early 1900s killed an estimated 80,000 workers from disease, accidents, and hostile conditions, while the line required rebuilding every few years as entire sections were consumed by the jungle. Even today, landslides regularly bury trains completely, with monsoon seasons washing away bridges overnight as if nature is actively erasing human attempts to impose order on chaos. The Kunming-Heku represents humanity's battle against an environment that refuses to be tamed, where the jungle reclaims every mile of track faster than engineers can lay it, turning maintenance into an endless war against nature itself. Number 5. The White Pass and Yukon Route, Alaska, Canada. Built during the 1898 Klondike Gold Rush, this railway embodies humanity's willingness to sacrifice everything for wealth, with the 110-mile line climbing from sea level to 2,885 feet through mountain passes, where temperatures drop to negative 60 degrees Fahrenheit and winds exceed 100 miles per hour. Workers had to blast through solid granite using dynamite in blizzard conditions, with conservative estimates placing construction deaths at 450 workers per mile during what they called the Trail of 98. Most who started the journey never finished it, either dying from exposure, accidents, or simply disappearing into the Arctic wilderness. The line includes grades of 3.9%, steeper than most trains can safely navigate, and curves where trains literally disappear around cliff faces into howling Arctic storms. Even today, the railway operates only during summer months because winter conditions make survival impossible, not just for passengers, but for the trains themselves, which freeze solid in temperatures that turn steel brittle as glass. 4. The Lunatic Express, Kenya. The Uganda Railway earned its nickname, the Lunatic Express, honestly. It was conceived, built, and operated by what many considered complete madness, crossing 660 miles from Mombasa to Lake Victoria through territory filled with hostile wildlife, disease-carrying insects, and environmental conditions that killed Europeans within weeks. The most legendary horror involved the Tsavo man-eating lions that stopped construction for months, killing and devouring over 130 workers, while entire construction camps were abandoned in terror. Malaria, sleeping sickness, and other tropical diseases killed thousands more, with the British government spending more on coffins than on safety equipment. Construction workers faced not just the usual railway hazards, but attacks from lions, leopards, and other predators, while diseases unknown to European medicine decimated the workforce. The railway was completed despite these horrors, but at a cost in human life that shocked even colonial administrators accustomed to treating native lives as expendable resources. Number 3. The Congo Ocean Railway, Africa. Built by French colonial forces, the Congo Ocean Railway represents one of the 20th century's forgotten genocides, with the 511-kilometer line connecting Brazzaville to the Atlantic coast, requiring passage through dense jungle, unstable swampland, and rivers that flooded without warning. An estimated 127,000 Africans died during construction, a death rate so catastrophic that French officials ordered the statistics classified to hide the scope of the atrocity. For every kilometer of track laid, 250 people died in what amounted to construction through systematic murder. Workers were essentially slaves, forced to work in 120 degrees Fahrenheit heat with no medical care, inadequate food, and tools that dated from the 19th century, while French overseers treated human life as the most expendable resource in their engineering calculations. The railway was completed, but it stands as a monument to colonial brutality, where the true cost was measured not in francs, but in African lives considered worthless by their European masters. 2. The Trans-Siberian Railway. Original construction, Russia. The world's longest railway line seemed impossible for good reason. It probably should have remained impossible, with original Trans-Siberian construction, 1891 to 1916, crossing 9,289 kilometers of frozen wilderness that included terrain where the ground never thaws and temperatures reach -71 degrees Fahrenheit. Conservative estimates place construction deaths at 100,000 workers, though the true number remains unknown as entire armies of laborers simply vanished into the Siberian wilderness, never to be found. The engineering nightmares included permafrost that shifted entire sections of track like a slow-motion earthquake, rivers that changed course and destroyed bridges, and supply lines so long that food often rotted before reaching work crews starving in temperatures that froze human flesh in minutes. Workers faced not just the usual construction hazards, but wolves, bears, and an environment so hostile that survival required constant struggle against cold that could kill in minutes and isolation so complete that death often went unnoticed for months. Number 1. The Burma Railway, Thailand, Myanmar. And now, the absolute worst railway in human history. A line built not for commerce, but for conquest, using human lives as disposable resources. The Japanese-built Burma Railway connected Thailand to Myanmar during World War II, requiring 415 kilometers of track through jungle terrain considered impassable by engineering standards. Around 100,000 people died building this railway. About 12,000 were Allied prisoners of war, but the vast majority were civilian laborers, recruited by force who worked under the same horrific conditions. POWs and conscripted workers labored 18-hour days with minimal food, no medical care, and tools that were often just bare hands. About 2,800 Australians died building the railway, with one Australian brigadier writing that the Japanese would carry out their schedule and didn't mind if the line was dotted with crosses. The mortality rate reached 25%, meaning 1 in 4 workers never lived to see the line completed, essentially 1 death for every railway sleeper laid. The line still operates today, but every mile remains a mass grave for the thousands who died building humanity's worst railway, a monument to what happens when human life becomes nothing more than an expendable resource in service of military ambition. These 20 railways remind us that not all engineering marvels represent human progress. Sometimes, they represent humanity's capacity for breathtaking cruelty disguised as necessity. From volcanic wastelands to frozen wilderness, these tracks were carved in human suffering. The question that haunts every mile: what price are we willing to pay for the railways we build today? If this exploration into railways' darkest chapters shifted your perspective, or we forgot a famously dangerous railroad, let us know in the comments. Subscribe for more on trains and railroads.